Okay, so I was so upset at myself because I couldn't find the collapsible bowl, right? So I bought two more, right? And that's what I'm gonna do. I mean, because I got doggy poop bags. I don't know why sometimes I don't take out the doggy poop bags with me, but I put some in this little pouch that I have right here, right? I got a second one that I'm gonna put on the other bag in case I'm walking with the other bag. Yeah, you know. Also, they had the Sportsman Repel D at Family Dollar Tree for $5. That's the cheapest I've ever seen it. So I bought me one. I still have some right here. It's the non-aerosol one, right? But I believe I paid like $13 for this one, non-aerosol. This one's 6 fluid ounces. This is 8 fluid ounces. Okay? So get you one. That was one of the things that I was thinking about when I was out walking the dog and we was in the shaded park with a lot of greenery. With a lot of greenery, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope the mosquitoes aren't out. I hope they don't bite my ass. And they didn't. We were blessed. We were blessed by the gods that the mosquitoes didn't bite my ass. Okay? So yeah. Not really ready to go home yet. So I might I don't know which one I like better. Kickstart or Rockstar. I think if Rockstar had a berry flavored, hands down Rockstar. So at least we went for a walk. You know, because the gym is closed on Sundays. What else? I mean, it's already 91 degrees out, and it's 4:30. So yeah, it's hot. Okay, it's hot. I asked my daughter if she was gonna buy her dad some flowers, and she said no. I was like, well, let me tell you something about your dad. You're like, oh, he's not that same person. I'm like, yeah, but let me just tell you something about what I know. I don't think you're gonna be able to go. Now go. Ah, bastard. So, yeah. Impatient people, you know, I'm telling you, they have no courtesy whatsoever, right? And I'm trying to let this dude, you know, do a left turn. And the person behind me was like, and she hurries up and, you know, scrambles from behind me and, you know, making it impossible for the poor dude to make his left turn. That was him screeching his tires, trying to giddy up on across, you know, these 3 lanes, to, you know, to get where he's going in the parking lot, which was either the bank or McDonald's. So yeah. my gosh. They are opening up something called ride share cars. Rental cars for ride share and delivery drivers. Wow. So, yeah, even people who don't have a hustle can get a hustle if they're willing to invest in the tools to make the hustle work. Now, Amazon and Uber, they do have, access to rental vehicles. Like if you're like an Amazon Flex driver and and you ruined your car out there and you still need to get out there and make your dollars, you can do it. You can do it. All right, you can do it. Never give up. But so. Because of the fires and stuff, that the West Coast is experiencing mudslides, and so there's a lot of closures and stuff going on as a result, right? Especially like camping grounds, pull offs and stuff, or that used to be like sightseeing, pull offs. And then I also heard that Louisiana and Mississippi, they've been suffering flooding. Like, yeah, what? I mean, right now, shit, I tell you, it's hot. It's hot here. So we got 93 degrees. Yeah, 93 degrees. Right? And kind of a replay of the last 2 years, because the last 2 years, 2 years ago we was in the triple digits for like 180 days, damn near at least 120, something like that, in the triple digits 2 years ago. Then last year I think it was like 4 months in the triple digits, but another 2 in the 90s. So 6 months, in 90 and above, right? And 4 months in the triple digits. So far, this year, February and March, we've already, experienced, 80 and 90 degree weather in March and April, or was that February and March? With February and March. So then I heard that the Midwest, who's been suffering a lot of tornadoes and and bad weather when it does rain, but they're not getting sufficient rain, and they had declared a drought. So yeah, a lot of things going on out here, okay? And just to let you know that each area, has their problems. and the majority of people are like, they will suffer, rain or cold weather, more than, the heat. But a lot of times, in order to get to the cold weather, you have to go to higher elevation at this time, right? You have to go to higher elevation at this time. And that higher elevation can definitely, take its own little toll on your bodies, because higher elevation affects the body differently than, like flatland Texas. Right? You hear about people who, suffer headaches and can't breathe and stuff. The higher the elevation that they go. I think that's a 1940 Chevy truck. Refurbished. Looks really good. Sounds good too. Northwest, right? But when she goes out, she also likes to bring back, some natural spring water, and, I was kind of watching her, and, it was kind of a trip on the way that, that people will line up to go get this spring water. Right? And so, the last spring water that she had received, she had said that she talked to this guy who had did a test, and he was like, well, it's only 30 particles per whatever the unit was, right? And it was like, that's the best it gets, So that's probably what I have been trying to say all along, that water has particles in it, and there's just no way we can't get around it, right? We just can't get around it. Cindy Wu was talking scientifically about water, right? She was like, well, if water didn't have the minerals and stuff, we wouldn't like it, because chemically it's just, H2, which is 2 atoms of hydrogen, and O, 1 molecule of oxygen. We wouldn't even like the taste or the smell. Right? And I was thinking to myself, exactly. But along with the H2O and the minerals, there are other particles in water. And all water varies by region, right? By the environment. Okay? So, even if, say you're going organic, right? You're going organic, but, since there's particles and living organisms in every single drop of water, right? That's different organisms that you're going to be consuming if you're not from that environment. Now, was talking about how Peru, was it Peru? I think it was Peru. Anyway, it was somewhere in Mexico where they had the Mayan temples, right? They get 9 inches of rainwater a year, right? Yeah, I think it was Peru, because it was Rosalind who's been in Peru, and she was saying, in Texas, on a flash flood day, you can get 9 inches of rain in one day, right? Compared to Peru, where they only get 9 inches of rain a year. Okay? Like, I know that there's like been some water fights and stuff, with Texas and, and New Mexico and, and everybody that depends on the Rio Grande, all right? Yeah. That's one of the reasons why, I hesitate. I hesitate on leaving the country, because, dang, I remember, drinking mineral bottled water, in foreign countries, 50 years ago. And I couldn't understand, well, why are they drinking the bottled water, right? And, drinking, tap water, just wasn't a thing to do. And I'm going to tell you, tap water is getting more and more expensive. But, spring water, processed water, filtered water, distilled water, all of that water, is also going to cost, right? So I've been checking out, like some of these water stations that they have, and they're charging usually about like 60 cents a gallon. So if you have whatever you got, you're just going to have to do the math. Damn it. You do the math. And then, here's another thing. You have to carry that water. Okay? Like, 5 gallons of water is very heavy. It's very heavy. And granted, the African women were, carrying goblets of water on top of their head and, walking for miles with it. And that's, you do what you have to do when you have to do it, all right? Shit. But who wants to do that? And there's still some areas, in Africa, because, they don't have a lot of rainwater either. And they definitely don't have, the plumbing and sewage system. So I was looking at this one video where they were in a fight with Marwa about water rights. They're claiming that Marwa's hogging the water, and he's not letting people have access to the fresh water over there in Kenya, where he's at on the countryside. Right? And so I'm sitting up here like, oh wow, is this capitalization going on over there in Africa? And then then it cooperative that as they started moving away from Africa and moving into these other cities, that they started developing other systems, of cooperation. And I'm like, well, I'll be darned, if it all started there, I mean, that's the problem. Shit. Because that's like the worst thing that seemed like it could have happened. That, oh, you need this, let me charge you for it. Right? And it makes sense if it's like under the umbrella of, cooperative, labor sharing. But it's not when, you think of it in terms of inequity. Feels so good off of the lake. I love it every time I come down here. It's just like, I don't know, it feels like 5 degrees cooler. So yeah. I'm just, waiting for an employer to, take a risk and employ me. Because, doing the Uber thing or delivery or gig work, it's just, you barely break even, okay? You barely break even. And even though they have, places where you can rent a vehicle or something like that and to be able to do it, I don't know how you're going to really be able to do it, if you got bills, right? I mean, to me, that seems like something that is structured for people who may be living with somebody or at least sharing, expenses with somebody. And then they can go ahead and, rent a vehicle to try to make extra money. But, yeah, and even those jobs, they're still talking about, paying you $14, $15 an hour, right? And $14 or $15 an hour, it is more than what you have, but the average person is like, it's just not enough, right? $14 or $15 an hour. I mean, how many hours would you have to work, just to be able to sustain yourself? Gotten any calls from any employers even wanting to do an interview, except that one time with Racetrack. And at that time I was like, I did apply at Racetrack. I thought maybe I might, could do Racetrack, because when you get really desperate, right? When you get really desperate, you're like, well, you can do this and you can do that. And, and I just had to remind myself, have faith. Don't God, feed the birds? That's what I had to tell myself. Instead of, trying to do things that, that might, be a problem. Now, when I was working at Amazon, right, I took it on as a challenge, because a lot of people didn't feel like, that I could, work, a strenuous, laborious job. And I did. I worked a strenuous labor job for 4 years. In my old ass grown up age. Okay? And I probably would still be working there, if they would have accepted my doctor's note. And my doctor was like, either your employer has to accept my note, or, you're going to have to find yourself another doctor. And Amazon was like, we don't take your note by itself. We need you to fill out our specific 5-page paperwork. And my doctor was like, nah. He ain't gonna do it for me. He probably ain't gonna do it for nobody, right? Because, they get caught up, having to fill out, these employer forms, because the employer, is basically trying to weed out folks. And yeah, basically you could say I got weeded out. So yeah. And ever since then, I just been unemployed, except for doing like gig work. And yeah, so when 5 years ago, I basically had told people, I said, you guys need to stop blaming our government for the things that these employers are putting you through, right? These employers, any reason, they'll raise prices. Any reason, they'll, stop supplying your favorite, product or merchandise. Any reason. And these are your employers, right? And these are the employers that will also say, nope, there's not enough profit for them to give you any kind of benefits. Right? And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Most of the time, if the employer would just organize the benefits, very rarely does it come out of their pocket, right? All they have to do, they have to do the administration to organize, right? They have to be the ones that say, yes, I have over 3,000 employees, and then that opens up, all of their employees to be able to purchase, discounted benefits. Why they won't do it? Like I said, that, it's diabolical of what these employers are doing nowadays, right? So, it's diabolical the way these employers will, tell you that, their benefits include, tuition reimbursement or will pay for courses, for educational opportunities, right? But then, you have to jump through hoops just to try to get it. And then it has limits and it has all these other things. So it's starting to feel like to the employees that, it was just smoke. It was just a smoke screen, to make it look appealing, because I was talking to my daughter. I was like, oh, look here, you have educational opportunity benefits, with the company that you work for. And she was like, nah, they have to approve it. And I was thinking about what I have went through, where, when I first started with AT&T, they didn't have no cap, right? Little restrictions as far as, giving you, educational opportunity. Then they started having caps. Then they started having specific approved courses, right? Make you jump through hoops, and by the time you go through the whole process, the class done started without you. And I was just, that's what made me done. I was like, shit, I'm done. Having to jump through those hoops and have managers come and ask me if that was an approved course, and and I was pissed off because these were supposed to be people with degrees, right? And I was trying to get approved for critical thinking, right? Like, is that an approved course? And I'm looking at them like, do you have a degree? Because you should technically, if you had a degree, you pretty much would know, requirements of what it takes to even get a degree, the classes that you have to have. And they were like, and I told them, I said, yeah, it's definitely. But they approved it a whole week after the course had already commenced, and I was like, I don't have the ability or the enthusiasm to try to catch up after the week. After the course that I'd already began, and I'm a week late. That's enough to discourage you, believe me, it is. And then I went to Amazon's educational opportunity, right? It was a little bit smoother. However, I was thinking that, I could do data analysis just using a hotspot. I couldn't, right? Found out pretty quickly that I had to have internet, high-speed internet, and that I had to have enough memory on my devices, to record the data that I was going to be downloading. And I was like, what? Right? Now, I didn't have to have it when I was going through Google data analysis course, right? Because they had an app that you could just, basically use that synthesized what you would be doing. Whereas the course that I was taking at school, they were actually, having you go to certain data banks, and you had to pull the information from certain data banks. It is hot. So last night, I did my rendition of a shrimp boil, right? I boiled some shrimp and some tilapia and put some of that, that seasoning. There's a seasoning. And it indeed had tasted like a boil. So I'm gonna have that again today. Tilapia and shrimp and potato, and I do have an ear of corn that I know I'm gonna have to eat unless it's already spoiled. Alright, so that's what I'm gonna have today to eat. But I do need to eat the potatoes too, because I had got 2 5-pound bags of potatoes. I think it was like 2 5-pound bags for $3 or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, we're getting that. So definitely gonna have to start eating those. I was watching a show about how people are eating a can of beans smoothie every day in order to get their protein and their fiber first thing in the morning. And I was thinking to myself, snap, that's probably kind of what I'm going to have to do, because, buying the pre-made protein is the most convenient, right? It's the most convenient. It's truly emulsified and everything, all right? But, if you're doing the powder, then you have to, mix it yourself, right? And then there's a lot more cleanup. So I'm thinking that sometime this week we're gonna try to do the bean smoothie. Because even when I was having the chicken, the white chili bean chicken, Oh my gosh, it had 9 grams of fiber in it. You know, and I told you I was making that for my nachos. I could still do that too, but am I? I don't know. I want to do the shrimp and the tilapia, cause I did buy me some more chips. When I walked into Aldi's had some pineapple flavored tortilla chips. And I was like, what? I didn't even hesitate. I just grabbed them. It wasn't on my shopping list. I just grabbed them like, we're going to eat this. Yeah. So, found out some good news, right? I am, what's today, Sunday? Tomorrow I'm going to call this pharmacy plan because for whatever reason, you know, it didn't show up that, you know, I had coverage, right? And I'm like, this pharmacy and this medical is really getting really complicated, especially once you're on Medicare, right? Because, you know, you have to get these approved coverages when it comes to the pharmacy. And I heard that, you know, GLP-1 is going to be offered to Medicare starting July 1st for $50 a month. Wow, right? Because right now, oh my gosh, if you go and you try to find, you know, where you can get GLP-1, it can be as high as $1,000 for a month, right? Even more. I've seen some prices even more than $1,000, like at CVS or, you know, and it was just like, what? $1,000, right? Then, you know, I was talking to them and they were like, yeah, you know, with a manufacturer coupon, you know, they made it to where it's cheaper to buy it without medical insurance than what it would cost you, you know, if you had insurance, depending on your deductible. That's what she said, depending on your deductible. And I was like, what? You know, that's crazy. So, but it was good news to know that poor people on Medicare can, you know, start getting GLP-1 and maybe getting healthy rather than, you know, exasperating, you know, and compounding your medical problems because, you know, they keep wanting to blame, you know, people, but you have to understand, you know, even if you're buying whole food, like I said, you know, you have to be concerned with the water. Your water has particles, may lack minerals. Your food may also do the same. Your food also may be grown in depleted soil. So you might think that you're eating healthy, but you don't have the nutrition that you need, you know, from the food that you eat because the soil is depleted of nutrition. Okay? So we keep blaming people for, you know, for what's going on, in our society. But I have seen, other countries who will refuse, certain imported foods from America because they're like, no, that's gonna make our people unhealthy because of the certain, preservatives or the processing or, the way that it was grown, right? Because I know I was sitting up there trying to figure out, like hydroponic farming, right? And I did, had some questions, right? And my question was, well, how is the food, getting nutrients? And they were like, telling me, well, they had to fortify, the water so that, the plants that grow from this water is going to have the nutrients. And I was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense to me. Because it was not making sense to me that, oh yeah, you can, grow your food, out of water. Sustained food is already, grown. Yeah, I understand that completely. That's just like roses, you're cutting off roses and you're putting them in the water and they'll only last so long. You're not going to be able to just keep them indefinitely. So, yeah, that is it. I'm headed back home. It's 93 degrees. And, I feel real good, about working out and staying active because I have been working out and staying active. And working out and staying active makes me feel better anyway, right? Yeah, it does. Money just to get out of the house, but sometimes it's worth it. It's worth it. To spend a little gas, and take a ride around. I really thought it would be a little bit more crowded at the lake. Because, kind of like what they did around Mother's Day, right? Mother's Day, it was like a family reunion every few feet. Another family gathering, But not so much for Father's Day. I did see some men who were, who got together and they were playing, and I was like, oh, okay, just a typical Sunday and maybe dinner or, I don't know. We'll see. Just be another Sunday. Ooh, I'm starting to get hungry. What did I eat today? I don't remember. Nope, I don't remember what I ate today. I know I had coffee. I had protein coffee. So, yeah. drop down to 91, go a couple of more blocks, and it would go up to 93. It's weird how that happens. But I did buy the pitties a couple of water buffalo ears as a special treat. You know, they had the biscuits and everything, but you know, oh yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Oh, that air feels good. Look, see, 93. Unbelievable. So it's 5:30 now. So yeah, we didn't just waste a day away. We did something. Second training day for the baby pitty. She did a great job, and we decided to make today her birthday. Right now, if I had money, you know, I probably would have, you know, did a bigger celebration. But maybe her next birthday we could do a bigger celebration because I had the money. Okay, the kid.